The government has raised the minimum wage to 1,050 ringgit per month or 5 ringgit and 5 cents per hour effective January 1st, 2019. The amount will be standardised across all states. Currently, the rate in Peninsular Malaysia is 1,000 ringgit, while the minimum salary in East Malaysia is 920 ringgit. According to the PM's office, the decision was made after a discussion with the National Wages Consultative Council. No incentives will be given to businesses that pay this higher minimum wage in view of the nation's fiscal situation. In its election manifesto, PH had promised to raise the minimum wage to 1,500 ringgit a month within 5 years. PM Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad has said that the hike will not be immediate, as it would raise production costs, which in turn would affect the nation's competitiveness. He added that a sudden increase would also ultimately lead to an increase in the cost of living. Malaysia will be paying Singapore 15 million Sing dollars or about 45.1 million ringgit for deferring the KL-Singapore HSR project. Economic Affairs Minister Datuk Sri Muhammad Azmin Ali says Malaysia will pay the sum by January 2019. The sum is not meant as compensation but rather as abortive costs due to contractual delays. Azmin says this was the outcome of discussions by officials from both countries at the end of last month. The two nations signed an agreement earlier today to postpone the project to May 2020. With the deal, Azmin says Malaysia is able to avoid making a big financial commitment for 2 years. Service is expected to start by January 2031 instead of the original start date of December 31st, 2026. In the meantime, the ongoing international joint tender for the HSR Assets Company will be called off. If by May 31st, 2020, Malaysia does not proceed with the HSR, Malaysia will also bear the agreed costs incurred by Singapore in fulfilling the project's bilateral agreement. The EPF says second quarter investment income climbed 7.6% to 12.4 billion ringgit. This is despite the market downturn experienced amid escalating US-China trade tensions and the interest rate hike in the US. Deputy CEO for Investment, Datuk Muhammad Nasir Abdul Latif explains the pension fund's diversification into different markets and sectors enabled the EPF to record a consistent performance. He says equities were the main contributor to its income during the quarter. As for the second half, Muhammad Nasir says global market uncertainty will still shroud the outlook, given the continued political and policy risks. However, on the domestic front, the outlook is likely to turn favourable, with easing foreign outflows and clearer policy direction from Putrajaya. Muhammad Nasir says the EPF remains focused in delivering above-inflation returns with at least 2% above the inflation rate over a 3-year rolling period. Bank Negara held the key interest rate steady at 3.25% today. The central bank expects the economy to stay on a steady growth path, although it acknowledges the downside risks from heightened trade tensions in the immediate term. It says such risks also come from prolonged weakness in the mining and agriculture sectors and some domestic policy uncertainty. While headline inflation came in at 0.9% in July, the central bank says it will edge upwards going forward and continuing into 2019. Underlying inflation should, however, remain relatively stable. While BNM left rates unchanged today, Bloomberg reports that a hike could be on the cards in November, thanks to pressure from the rest of the emerging markets universe and Putrajaya's fiscal deficit woes. It says while there is nothing alarming so far, this year's foreign fund flows show that not everyone is fully convinced Putrajaya can quickly get to grips with the spending imbalance. The MOF has ordered telcos to exempt their prepaid customers from the 6% service tax. Finance Minister Lim Guan Eng says the exemption, based on Section 34(3)A of the Service Tax Act of 2018, will be enforced tomorrow, September 6th. This means all users will get the full credit value while topping up with prepaid mobile reload cards. Lim had already announced over the weekend that mobile prepaid cards are exempted from the tax. He said this was clear based on the list of consumer goods and services under the new SST introduced on September 1st. However, judging from complaints, consumers are still being charged the tax, prompting Lim to warn telcos that he would intervene if they failed to comply with his directive.